This is chapter 5, and it's January 19th, 2024. I think I recorded last in the summer of 2023, so I'm moving along slowly but surely. This chapter I'm going to talk mostly about Don Francisco Landavazo y Ortega and his wife Maria Clarita Sanchez de Landavazo, because he's buried under the St. Francis Cathedral here in Santa Fe, and I wanted to show articles and documentation from the church and other letters and maps, or one map, just talking about the area where we have been, our family has been for a long time. So here we go. This is a map from the internet where I could show a lot of places that I heard about growing up. You can see the Rio Grande River running on the right side of the map, and you can see Socorro, Polvadera, and then going up north, Belen, Albuquerque, and Santa Fe, which is off the map. But I have already talked about Alamo and Puertecito and showed pictures of my mom and Uncle Jimmy and Aunt Rose at Puertecito in front of those rocks. And I have information, I forget from where, that shows that our grandfather Tranquilino Baca was born in Puertecito, which is interesting because it's close to Alamo, which is where my uncle said they used to go visit relatives. And my uncle, or our grandfather Tranquilino's grandmother, would have been a Zuni woman that we don't know her name. So anyway, I'm thinking she came from around there. And also, it doesn't show on the map, but Cebolleta is up there north of Alamo, and it's at the foothills of Mount Taylor, which is one of the sacred mountains. And then a book that I found in St. John's, they talk about there being people that stole natives and sold them to Mexicans as servants that lived up in Cebolleta. So anyway, I'm just still thinking about the slave trade that was going on in New Mexico in the mid-1800s. Even after the Civil War said there would be no more slavery, here we are. But anyway, I learned about Kelly and Magdalena and Daddle, Piketown. So all of this area our family has been for a long time. On our grandfather Tranquilino Baca's side of the family. So that's the map. I'll read a little bit about Maria Clarita Sanchez de Landavazo, because she's the one that had the land grant from her father. They were married. She was married to Francisco Landavazo y Ortega on her father's ranch in Polvadera. And it looks like a beautiful place by the river. Any place by the water is amazing. So what I have for her is that from the New Mexico births and christenings in 1726 to 1918 records, Maria Clara Sanchez, aka Maria Clarita Clara Sanchez, was baptized in Belen, Valencia County, New Mexico on August 24th, 1829 in Nuestra Senora de Belen Catholic Church. She was born just before this, no date provided in Sonora, Mexico, or in New Mexico. She died on July 30th, 1875 in San Rafael, New Mexico, which would be south, south from San Antonio on this map. Her father's name, Francisco Antonio Sanchez, aka Diego Antonio Sanchez. Mother's name, Maria de Jesus Chavez. So I'm indexing from Index Project batch number C51270-1. Anyway, I have the citation in my book. And I think I mentioned this before. I had her pedigree chart done, and her ancestors can be traced to the 1600s in New Mexico, and also to León, Castile, Sevilla, Toledo, Aragon, and Madrid in Spain, and in Lisbon, Portugal in the 1200s, tying her to Louis X, King of France, and Christopher Columbus in Genoa, Italy, who was born in 1451 and died in 1506 in Spain. So let's see, she had an amazing heritage, and also the fact that she married Francisco Landavazo y Ortega, whose father was Francisco Diego Landavazo y Mondragon. A story written by Isaac Barth, whose mother was Refrucia Landavazo, granddaughter of Clarita, published in the St. John's Observer, June 26, 1937, states, the family settled on a part of the land at Polvadera in the early 1700s, and also in Navajoa in the state of Sonora, Mexico. The family was given land to Don Francisco Landavazo y Mondragon by King Charles of Spain in 1790. At the time the land was granted by the king, Don Francisco Landavazo y Mondragon lived on his lands near Sevilla, one of the provinces of Andalusia, Spain, where Don Francisco was generally referred to as El Nazareno, the Nazarene. After the land grant, Don Francisco y Mondragon came to Mexico in about 1800 and colonized the grant and cultivated a large tract of land at what became known as La Noria de Landavazo, Landavazo's well. Noria de Landavazo is about 30 miles north of Hermosillo and about 250 miles northwest of Navajoa, Sonora, Mexico. Let's see, so in 1848, Don Francisco married Maria Clarita Sanchez, daughter of Don Diego Antonio Sanchez y Santillanes, at the rancho of her grandfather, Don Diego Antonio Sanchez y Baca, at what is now called Polvadera, New Mexico, 12 miles north of Socorro. The ranch was a part of the Polvadera grant from the King of Spain to some of the early conquerors in about 1700. Don Francisco Landavazo y Ortega was elected in 1857 to the New Mexico Territorial Senate and was assassinated by poisoning by his fellow members of the Senate. After appropriating funds for an elaborate and expensive funeral, both branches of the legislature accompanied the remains to the Catholic Cathedral, where the remains still rest. And then I'll show you photos of the documentation of that and some articles in the paper next. When I went to St. John's, Arizona, I met up with a cousin who was part of the Church of Latter-day Saints there, and she took me to the very special basement of the church where they have a lot of records, and she put together a book for me on the Landavazos and the history of St. John's. And in this book was this photocopy from St. Francis Cathedral here in Santa Fe when Refugio Barth's son Jacob Barth did some research and wrote up a lot of things that he found out about Francisco Landavazo. So this is a photocopy of, on the left, what they got from the cathedral there when they were asking about where Francisco Landavazo was buried. So they got this document dated October 5th, 1911. And on the left, it's hard to read, so it's translated on the right. It says Santa Fe County, Nuevo Mexico, New Mexico, October 5th, 1911. According to the record books of burials of the Cathedral Church of St. Francis of Santa Fe County, New Mexico, I find the following. On the 19th day of the month of January, 1858, in the parish sepulchre belonging to the corpse of Francisco Landavazo, husband of Clara. So a sepulchre is a tomb carved in stone. So that's why I think it's in the catacombs under the cathedral. So it says, belonging to the corpse of Francisco Landavazo, husband of Clara of Cebolleta, and then they're trying to see what the spelling is, I guess. New Mexico, died on the 18th day in Santa Fe in the season of the legislative session. Witness, Donatiano Vigil, President of the Senate, and Francisco Ortiz, Representative. E.M. Avil, Parish Priest, so be it. I do declare and certify that these here above are true and correct according to the record books of burials of the Cathedral Church, as above. I do declare and certify that I am the custodian of the said record books and that I am the actual rector of the same Cathedral Church in Santa Fe, at Santa Fe. And then it says Santa Fe County, New Mexico, the Very Reverend Anthony Forcheque, I guess, VJG and Rector. I also looked for newspapers to see if there was anything about his death, since he was a big shot guy in the legislature. He was from Valencia County. He traveled to Santa Fe to come to the meetings before New Mexico was a state. It was a territory. So he was in the Territorial Assembly or Territorial Senate. I'm not sure what it was called, but I did find an article in this, I think it was the Santa Fe New Mexican, which I'll show you next. I did some research on newspapers from those dates. I tried to find something around the time that he died in January of 1858. And it came up as an article in the Santa Fe Weekly Gazette in Spanish, dated January 23rd, 1858. Image 3, Library of Congress, Chronicling America, Historic American Newspapers. So it's hard to see the one on the left, but that's what the page looks like. And then I magnified it and highlighted in Spanish how he died, because that's what I was curious about. So I'll read you the entire article. And what I highlighted was how he died, because I wanted some kind of proof that he was poisoned, because that was what everybody said, but I didn't find any documentation. So this is the closest that I could find about how he suffered anyway. So it's in Spanish, but I did a kind of a rough translation in English of the article. So it starts, It is with feeling that we announce today the death of the Honorable Francisco Landavazo, representative of the County of Valencia. He died on Sunday, January 17th last, at 2 o'clock in the morning after a few days of strong attack of inflammation of the throat muscles. So this is in Spanish, escalencia. So I tried to translate that and came up with inflammation of the throat muscles, which is conducive to poisoning, I suppose. So it goes on. In the House of Representatives last Monday, after reading the newspaper, Mr. Juan Montoya of Valencia got up and said, "Mr. President, I stand up to fulfill my painful duty to formally communicate to this honorable House the death of my partner, the Honorable Francisco Landavazo, member of this House for the County of Valencia. The death of this one, our friend, was unexpected, and it is so much more painful because of the presence of his wife and expensive children." That was my translation. "That they believe their protector in the enjoyment of their health. The Eternal Father, in calling our companions so promptly to the celestial mansions, now has given another proof that in the midst of life we are in death. Our duty is to deplore the departure of our friend in the presence of his Creator, but we can have confidence that he will receive the reward of his just deeds from the hands of the Almighty, while he belonged to us, the mortals. With great confidence I can say, and I know that you support me, that the deceased has our respect to a high degree, because he was an honest, generous, and kind man. Mr. Landavazo was a native of the state of Sonora, was about 44 years old, and was a citizen of this territory for 13 years. He was married in Cebolleta County of Valencia 6 years ago and leaves a wife and 4 children, who together with us deplore his disease. A commission was appointed by the President to arrange the funeral of the deceased Honorable and it goes on. The governor and the council met with the House of Representatives and proceeded in procession to the house where he was, the deceased, and from there to the main parish of this city, where the mortal remains were entrusted to the sepulchre. The funeral rites were held in the same parish on Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the morning. A large number of citizens of Santa Fe met with the members of the assembly to witness the solemn act. Below is a photo. On the next page I have a photo of the microfiche record of January 18, 1858, New Mexico Territorial House of Representatives Legislative Session. And I found this in the New Mexico Archives here in Santa Fe, and I got a photocopy of it that I will show next. Okay, so I will read you the microfilm copy, which I believe is in Spanish, so excuse my rough translations. But it starts out, Mr. Gallegos of San Miguel offered the following resolutions. Preamble resolution. Inasmuch, it has pleased the divine Redeemer of the universe in his dispensations to take us away from this world and to send it to the eternal mansions of our very esteemed and useful colleague, the Honorable Francisco Landavazo, elected member by the County of Valencia to the Chamber of Representatives of the Legislative Assembly. For the same reason, it is resolved by the House of Representatives that by their correct handling and friendly feelings as well as by the behavior of a good citizen and a member of this body, he became recipient to our sympathies and respects, which for their virtues will not be forgotten of us. In addition, we as members feel his loss, and similarly we sympathize with his afflicted family in the untimely loss of the deceased. Result also, that as his loss has been of a feeling grown to the members of this house, we will use the customary mourning, mourning. We will use the customary mourning during the present session of the Assembly. Result also, that the Senate be invited by us to pay the tribute paid to his remains, and that this house will attend his funeral. Result also, that the principal secretary of this house be required to transmit a copy of this preamble and resolutions to his bereaved family. Result, that this house be extended until tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. So that's how they made a resolution about what they talked to the Assembly about his death, and they suspended the meeting until the next day at 10 o'clock. So this is, this is our ancestor. This is Jesus Landavazo's father. And Jesus was the blue-eyed Frenchman who had a Spanish wife and many children, but also a Navajo servant and a Zuni servant. And our Zuni great-great-grandmother, my Zuni great-great-grandmother, was our ancestor. And I still don't know her name, but if anybody knows, I will be happy to add that to my story. And hopefully you're enjoying this.